So we're here in the play space. You really wanted it to evoke a sense of physicality.
It is a digital game, but anytime you're reminded of that was a bad thing. Getting the drift to the cards was actually a big goal of Ben Brode when he was talking about the design early on. Even when you see your opponent mousing over their cards represents that I'm sitting across the table from someone, and it's important to see that there is life on the other side of the table, even in a virtual space.
So in today's world, Hearthstone and collectible card games are common terminology for gamers, but there was a time where these things were unknowns, and the Hearthstone team was very small. Can you tell me about those days?
For sure. The team itself was put together by Blizzard in a response to the want to have a group of people to throw at projects that excited us. New ideas had come up all the time for the studio, and while they were exciting and something that we would think we'd like to pursue, oftentimes we just didn't have the resources or the people to throw at it. We've always been a big fan of collectible card games. Many were the days you could walk down the halls and find people playing any variety of them. They're a lot of fun. They're something that's always been very exciting to us as developers. But at the same time, there's always been a cloud of complexity around games like that. We really wanted to find a way to not just bring it into the digital realm, in addition to that, also make it as accessible as possible.
So it was time to reveal Hearthstone to the world at Pax East of all places. What was that process like? Did you get the reception you expected?
I would say it's safe to say no. I think we were all a little disappointed, but also understanding over time of why the reaction was what it was. Collectible card games are hard to get your mind around. They're hard to really get an understanding as a viewer of or a spectator of these things, what's so compelling about them. It's easier to look over the shoulder of someone playing World of Warcraft or say Diablo and get it almost immediately. There's something very compelling about that. So as a result, what we wanted to do was just try to present something in such a way that had an over-the-shoulder appeal and something that had a visual appeal, but it was very, very quick and easy to play a 5-10 minute game with a friend and get it.
So we're here in the play space. The way that you play cards is by physically dragging them on with your mouse. You really wanted it to evoke a sense of physicality.
Absolutely. It is a digital game, but anytime you're reminded of that was a bad thing from our perspective. When pulling a card out, it could just push right into the space and stay on the same plane, but actually getting the drift to the cards was actually a big goal of Ben Brode when he was talking about the design early on. Getting that kind of a drift in there so that it feels like I'm actually holding a card and I can actually put it back and let go and decide, no, I want to change my mind. The mousing over the cards. Even when you see your opponent mousing over their cards, you get a little bit of a glow, which again represents that I'm sitting across the table from someone, and it's important to see that there's life on the other side of the table, even in a virtual space.
A lot of players may not realize it, but the gameplay of dragging cards onto the screen and seeing them drop and make a very physical impact was very intentional, right?
Absolutely. Certainly we explored all sorts of different opportunities. I mean, we knew it was going to be a digital game. But as we talked more and more amongst the members of the team, we started to really get back to what excites us about collectible card games. The moments that were really key to us as players and as fans of the genre all tended to be very physical. We started to talk about things like playing that winning card from your hand and having a bit of a flourish to it because you were excited to have played the last or the final card in the game. We talked about pack opening. And if you talk to most collectible card game players, there is a very real thing with pack opening. There's a lot of superstition, there's a lot of excitement that comes from that. Most of them, when you talk to them, you can talk about the feeling of what that pack feels like in your hand, what the sound is when the foil finally gives way and tears open. How do we replicate that in a digital space? We had a key byword throughout most of the production of, and really it continues to this day in Hearthstone, which is that element of delightful surprise, how a piece drops onto the board. If it's a really powerful one, the fact that it cracks the board and creates these glows of light. All of these things are added to how the game feels unique and really how it makes the most of the digital space. My favorite pieces for Hearthstone tend to be the ones that, as a collectible card game, are easily readable. They have to be usually very evocative of the class that they're involved in. Webweave is one of those that was a fun piece to see come to fruition. I mean, it was just the idea of playing this magical, majestic kind of string game, which we all know and love. Yeah, exactly. Cat's cradle to summon spiders, which by itself is a fun piece, and I immediately know in looking at that piece what card was played, and more importantly, when it ends up going to the Goldens, the goal for those being to tell stories and to do fun, evocative things that only could happen in the digital space. Somehow, Nicholas Kinney, our Golden artist, managed to get this so that the strings changed into at least one of two, if not more, different combinations in a feat that still boggles even the most technically minded of us. And it was just an awesome thing to see him pull off. And for that reason, it went right to the top of not only one of my favorite illustrations, but favorite Goldens in the game.
So you knew you wanted it to be set in Warcraft and you knew you wanted it to be a collectible card game. How did you translate those 9 classes? Something that isn't really in games like Magic the Gathering. You know, you have colors, but you can mix those colors. In Hearthstone, you can't do that. So tell me about the process of designing classes.
I think a lot of that came from World of Warcraft. I mean, when you look at World of Warcraft as a player, a lot of the identity that comes from your characters in World of Warcraft comes from their class. Oftentimes when you're talking to another World of Warcraft player and, you know, what do you play? You're not asking what race, you're asking what class. To that end, we wanted to carry that over into the trading card game. And in doing so, really allow the personality of each of those classes, because they do have very definitive personalities, to come through in not just the kind of cards that you're putting into your deck, but even the play style of that hero or that deck itself. All of those things were very, very important when it came to making sure that it felt of the World of Warcraft, but also felt fresh and new as well.
Time runs out on me.
Let's talk about Pyros. That's a really interesting card that is something that would be very difficult to pull off in a physical capacity because it's bouncing back to your hand as a different kind of card. So it starts as this egg and eventually molts into this giant phoenix.
We had the same illustrator do all 3 variations of him, and he does get more and more powerful looking in the card art itself. I think I might want to actually try to play him in hopes that we might get him. What do you think?
Sure.
Let's do it. Dealing 3 damage to a character and freeze it. Let's do it.
Then you're going to get that +1 trigger on the mono worm and trade that in.
Let's do that.
There you go.
Goodbye shields, no more taunt. This is where the art is really powerful in a game like this, is the art gets to represent something that would only be a key word on a card that you'd have to remember was there. Much less memory on your part required when you just look at the board and realize he's frozen, he has taunt. There's a lot less mousing over of cards and trying to figure out each turn, you know, on either player's side, which is only going to enhance gameplay.
An incredible discovery!
There have been quite a few expansions and quite a few adventures at this point. Do you have any high points in terms of things that you were really proud to accomplish art-wise or effects-wise?
Oof, there's been quite a few. I mean, having the luxury of being involved since day one means there's a lot to pick from. It sounds such the pat answer, but they all have their high points. And I think that's because, honestly, the way we've developed the sets is never 100% the same. We're always introducing something new. I really enjoy a lot of the aesthetics that went into Knights of the Frozen Throne, largely because they are based on a story that's also near and dear to my heart. I loved Journey to Ngoro. I like dinosaurs. I'm still a 12-year-old kid. What can I say? Dinosaurs are awesome, and they're a lot of fun to play with, especially when you imbue them with elemental powers. We can keep going back and back through the sets, and there's always going to be something that puts a smile on my face or makes me excited to continue to be a part of Hearthstone's story.
So in Hearthstone, you have to evoke a wide range of emotions. On one end, I would say whimsical. On the other, I'd say epic.
Epically charming being the order of the day. We oftentimes find ourselves having to find artists that fit one or both styles. A great example of that would be Snow Flipper Penguin. If we want to look at that in just the base form, this is the regular common card that you would find for this. So for epically charming, he nails it every time. If we just want to go epic all the way, look no further than Archmage Antonidas.
There he is.
It is just, he is probably my favorite piece of art in the game. He's one of my favorite legendaries, but also as far as a piece of art goes, doesn't get any better than this. Wayne Reynolds is a guy to go to if you want just epic, over the top. This is one that I love so much that when he turned in the final, I ended up, I bought the original off of him. So I've got this little painting sitting with me every day.
You require my assistance.
All right, Ben, time to choose your favorite children. What is your favorite and least favorite Hearthstone card?
Start with favorite. I'll go with Brawl for a very artsy reason. It has very little to do with what it does in game, though that is helpful from time to time, and more to the fact that that is one of the ones that the effect itself, being in a digital space, could only happen in a digital space. Take all the minions currently in play, munge them all together, pick one, and it survives and everything else gets cleared out. And that anticipation in that moment of, oh my God, will it be the one I hope it is the thing that makes that the most interesting to me.
Now it's the dreaded part. What is your least favorite card?
Dr. Boom, because who likes going against that guy? I mean, the times I've lost worst and lost hardest was against that guy, so thank goodness I saw the back end of him as he left the room.
He's the epitome of RNG.
Yes.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a developer's look into designing cards, aesthetics, and all the various bits of Hearthstone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir, it has.